The 9th plenary meeting of the General Assembly is called to order. The Assembly will hear the address by His Excellency Jorge Carlos de Almeida Fonseca, President of the Republic of Cabo Verde. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Jorge Carlos de Almeida Fonseca, President of the Republic of Cabo Verde. You have the floor, Excellency.
Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state and government, Mrs. Maria Fernanda Espinosa Garcés, President of the United Nations General Assembly, Mr. Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, honorable heads of delegation, excellencies. Warm greetings to the Madam President of the General Assembly, and congratulations on your election. I wish you much success as you embark on your noble and challenging mission. I also congratulate Mr. Miroslav Lajčák from the Republic of Slovakia, the outgoing President of the General Assembly, for his excellent work during his term. I would further like to express my utmost appreciation to the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, for his smart and competent stewardship of the directions of our common house, and to reaffirm our full trust and profound respect for his leadership, particularly amid the many difficulties that the world currently faces. I am referring, for example, to terrorism, which is expanding in many countries, the issue of migration crisis, particularly in the African continent, from where we get news virtually every day of youth, children, and women who abandon their homes out of desperation and venture into the world to face subhuman conditions in search of a better life. The impact of climate change on human security, conflicts, and other threats to peace coming to us from all quadrants of the world, the glaring situation of poverty that continues to be a reality, challenging our global capacity to leave no one behind. In order to mitigate these and other problems faced by all of us present here in this august assembly, the United Nations have worked tirelessly under the leadership of our Secretary General, to whom I would like to express once again our profound gratitude. In order to face these problems, the Madam President of the General Assembly could not be more right in proposing as the theme of her presidency, making the United Nations relevant to all people. as well as making multilateralism, which I define here as the combination of efforts and a path to achieve global leadership and shared responsibilities, and to build the peaceful, equitable, and sustainable societies that we all desire. Excellencies, Madam President of the General Assembly, we will celebrate the 70-year anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on December 10th of this year. However, hate, discrimination, and violence are still alive and present. As the Director General of UNESCO stated, and I quote, "Hundreds of millions of women and men are destitute, deprived of basic livelihoods and opportunities. Forced population movements are violating rights on unprecedented scale. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development promises to leave no one behind. Human rights must be the bedrock for all progress moving forward." End quote. December 10th, International Human Rights Day, is strategically important to the extent that human rights established a universal standard of society to be achieved. Globally inclusive, socially emancipating, able to allow free and full development for every human being. The fact that universal standards and principles of human rights are integral to the legal order of many countries is a major advancement for humanity. However, this does not mean that they are fully and effectively accepted. In fact, Excellencies, human rights achievements translate into a framework of rights that combine with cultural or historical conditions to weave a non-linear history that is contradictory at times, but always open and incomplete. Therefore, respect for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights constitutes an unquestionably noble goal, and at the same time, one of the greatest challenges of our time. On the one hand, the struggle for its effectiveness is intensifying. However, in large parts of the world, violations are virtually institutionalized. These are also observed in situations of war, which unfortunately afflict many parts of the world, especially in Africa, taking on unacceptable dimensions with common practices that tend to increase, such as human trafficking, including that of children, victims of organized transnational crime, as well as acts of genocide and other war crimes. Under these often unfavorable conditions, we raise the banner of hope and fight on to defend and promote human rights, fundamental human rights, driven above all by our faith in the capacity of humanity to creatively adapt reality to our will despite causalities and constraints. Our country's choice to pursue a policy of peace, dialogue, and understanding to prevent and resolve conflicts reflects and acknowledges these values. More than that, it emanates from the very nature of the Cape Verdean people, from a culture of tolerance that has allowed our policies to be shaped by such values and principles over 4 decades of history as a sovereign nation. In our day-to-day lives, we have demonstrated that tolerance is possible, that the exchange of values is a reality even in the face of adversity. Madam President of the General Assembly, heads of delegations, Mr. Secretary General, we are profoundly regretful to see that the death penalty still exists in many countries of the world. The existence of the death penalty in the 21st century requires profound, careful, and responsible reflection from all of us. It is a fact that the need for a new universal conscience leads us to rethink our purposes and motivations for human coexistence, always based on respect for life and the eminent dignity of human beings. The constitution and justice system of Cabo Verde do not provide for life sentences or the death penalty. The latter, in fact, has been inapplicable in our country since before the last quarter of the 19th century. A unique historical and social condition has instilled in us cultural principles and values that promote the right to life under any circumstances. In this regard, we wish to reiterate our absolute support and appeal to the conscience of authorities for Pope Francis' recent appeal to seek an international consensus for the abolition of the death penalty. In addition to calling for the unequivocal, firm, and example-setting repudiation of capital punishment, Pope Francis also spoke against the so-called extrajudicial executions or illegal killings that have been committed. We firmly believe, Excellencies, in the name of clemency and prudence, that capital punishment is not an appropriate and fair instrument, nor is it efficient in achieving justice, in light of its insurmountable conditionalities and weaknesses. Life, as a superior value, cannot be left at the mercy of presumably fallible judges who, unaware of the laws of clemency, imprudently insist on donning the soiled robe of an executioner and succumbing to the dim light cast by a law that, as a relative value, is certainly not above the value of life and ethics that it incarnates. In addition, Excellencies, we also believe in the rehabilitation of man through a permanent and optimistic anthropology, and that we have, in the modern world, institutional conditions, and less grievous forms of punishment that are suitable and effective, and avoid the shameful and radical solution of ending the life of a fellow human being. Therefore, capital punishment is unjustifiable from the point of view of criminal justice under the rule of law. It is along these lines that we would like to fully subscribe to the Holy Father Pope Francis's plea for a universal moratorium on executions. Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, heads of delegations, Mr. Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, Cape Verde, a small island state with major shortages of resources at the height of our 43 years of independence, is proud to be a democratic country built under the rule of law through the sacrifice and determination of Cabo Verdeans residing in country and abroad. I believe that my country, even if modestly, can contribute to the search for solutions to major problems that currently afflict our troubled world. In addition to the political stability that has characterized our country and the democratic regime that we have built and consolidated, the nation of Cabo Verde, that predates the creation of the state, may be considered an example of peaceful coexistence among people from different countries with different beliefs, who mixed into a unique and diverse culture that is open to the world and the exchange of values. I am also proud, without any pretense of false modesty, of our country's journey from independence to the present. In fact, I can say that the human, economic, and financial indices that our country has achieved have been favorably evaluated by major international institutions, particularly those in the financial arena. However, with a service-based economy, a very small market, and an agricultural sector that struggles against desertification and scarce rainfall, we cannot ignore our significant vulnerabilities. And we know that we cannot rest because we have graduated to middle-income country. Rather, we think that we cannot lose sight of the fact that our economy continues to be very dependent, that it cannot absorb a very significant portion of our workers, with all the social effects that this entails, and this obligates us to continue to rely on international solidarity. Naturally, we must also increase our reliance on domestic resources, developed through public-private partnerships, be more effective in fighting against poverty, extreme poverty, social exclusion, and unemployment, particularly youth unemployment, and thus promote growth and development in our country. Our constraints in energy, water, health, and sanitation, to name just a few areas, will need our continued attention. and we will need to build the indispensable infrastructure to create the conditions required for the sustainable growth of our economy. Similarly, as we look toward our future, we must also consider the increasingly disastrous impacts of climate change and other natural disaster risks on the world, particularly small island developing states. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in 2008, Cabo Verde graduated to middle-income country during a major international financial crisis, which contributed to our missing the window of opportunity created by the graduation. Since then, the structural vulnerabilities afflicting our country not only aggravated, but also became more complex. We see this in our growing regional asymmetries, which are aggravated by the lack of territorial continuity of an island nation, the nefarious effects of drought and desertification, and other climate changes, the weak production capacity, youth unemployment, as well as social and gender inequalities, the excessive burden of external debt on the budget, the difficulties in internally connecting our country by air and by sea, which hampers the creation of a competitive and coherent market, which is essential to develop tourism. These facts convince us of the need for and pertinence of support measures that are distinct and adjusted to the reality of our country in the areas of development, trade, and foreign debt. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we call for more consequent inclusion and eligibility of island developing countries in line with the work that is being pursued and that I encourage at the United Nations system, the OECD, and other institutions. Toward this purpose, the government of Cabo Verde will organize a roundtable in Paris in December of this year to call on the mobilization of innovative partnerships that are consistent with our reality as a small island developing state. Cabo Verde will want to hear what our development partners think of the pertinence of our proposals and options, and to discuss forms of cooperation with them in close coordination with our agreed national efforts, including the alignment of our national development plan with the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. Therefore, we count on your support in this journey with Cabo Verde toward the sustainable development that we all strive for. Thank you very much for your attention.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank His Excellency, the Presidency of the Republic of Cabo Verde, and I ask protocol to accompany him.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank His Excellency Jorge Carlos de Almeida, President of the Republic of Cabo Verde. May I request representatives to remain seated while we greet the Head of State.